Well, hello, and this will probably be the last video I'll make on this mess, but thank you, Pastor George, for speaking up for Carl, for you know him, you met him, and you know him as the man he is now, a good, generous, more than generous man, and thank you. The only thing I don't understand about his sister Bridget is that she blames this all off on her son Ross Allen. And yes, Ross Allen sent a message and said some things, but this all began because for some reason the family didn't want to believe that Jimmy, Karl's dad, signed the paperwork for him to go into the Navy at 16 years old. I don't know why that was such a big deal when he did do it. I have the paperwork, here. Because when you try to file for VA disability, you have to get all your paperwork together. You got to get all your ducks in a row. And all the paperwork comes, even all the way back to where Jimmy signed the paperwork, gave it to the Navy recruiter there in where they lived, and they sent it up to where Karl was, and he got in. And he ended up over in Vietnam. For some reason, it really irritates him that he happened to be the one that had to go to Vietnam. I'm sure while he was over there, he would have been gladly changed places with any of them that wanted to go there, but needless to say, that can't happen. But, and you know the check that Karl gets once a month on the 1st from the VA for serving over there and with major PTSD. I think this all has to do with when Karl went into the service and went over there, he wasn't the same person that he was when he come back. And yes, Karl was mischievous, and he did a lot of things as a teenager. So did his brothers. Boys will be boys and do things that they shouldn't do when they're teenagers. And girls will too, so they're not out of it either. But it just when I read that where she said it was Ross Allen and that did it, and she didn't know that he was doing it because he's not there. Shame on you, Bridget. Why would you blame your son for something that got started years ago that Ross Allen had nothing to do with? And in fact, on this matter that's newly matter, it was you that called Karl up and jumped onto him for me saying, I made that video telling Elizabeth Elijah off. I made the video and I said it, and she was just all upset with Karl about me telling that Jimmy signed the paperwork, which, I mean, it seems strange to be such a big deal because he did. I mean, he did. George, when you come down, I'll show you the paperwork where Jimmy signed for Karl to go into the service. I'll show you. There's no big deal. I mean, the man has passed away. He died of cancer. And I only talked to him once, but I made a promise to him, and I will keep it to my death. I mean, that's just how it is with me, and you know that, George. If I promise something, I'm going to do it. I'll do it unless something stops me. Well, that something that could stop me would be death. But All I want, George, is if something should happen to me, please help take care of Karl. Don't let people run over him or abuse him, I mean, he's had that all his life. Um, but but get back to John, to Ross. No, they got all hyperventilated. Bridget called and made a big stink, and in fact, she sounded like, "Did you know she did this? Did you know she did?" Well, Bridget, I'm not just a she. I'm your brother's wife. Wow. And yeah, he usually knows everything I do because we communicate. And what I said about Bob, I heard you on the phone. You were screaming so loud. I heard you on the phone tell Karl that Bob said you could not have been in Vietnam because you was in high school. Well, no. No. He had quit high school and he got into the Navy, and that's where they happened to send him. So that shows you Bob don't know nothing about what's going on. And but you're the one that first brought him into it. And then Ross, when he said that about confirming it, I know it had to come because he didn't say Bob said it, but he said that you were too young to be over there. You were in high school. Well, that's the word you said that Bob said. So that's how Bob got into it. You all brought the man into it. If you didn't want him brought into it, then you shouldn't have said that. And if he said it, then he shouldn't have said it because he don't know nothing. So that's the situation with Bob. You know, Bridget did it to herself. I mean, brought him into it. But, what she said, Bob had nothing to do with any of this. Ross sent those messages. Ross didn't send those messages up front. That was after you talked. I got mad and made that video against Charlie and David and everyone. Then Ross Allen got hurt, got mad, and well, of course he's going to defend his uncles. You've raised your kids around them and your mom. Karl has never been included into the family, and when he was, David's on his ass wanting him to leave. Why? I don't know. You know, David pulls off a lot of crap that you all don't know about, and he keeps it very dark and secret. But it's, and I don't even blame Ross Allen for what he said. He's just been told so much stuff. You know, the last time we seen Ross Allen, he was just a little boy. Innocent little boy that got raised up in a family that has always disliked Karl and always put him down, because I've heard it with my ears. So I'm sure Ross Allen heard all the nonsense lies that you all would tell on Karl over and over again. So why shouldn't he defend his precious uncles down there? Because that's all he knows. He don't really know Karl. He don't know Karl at all. So all he was doing is defending his uncles that who he knows. And he don't know whether they're telling the truth or not. So don't blame this on Ross Allen. Don't even go there. Especially if he's not living with you. Well, don't go there. Don't blame him. How sick is that? Blame your own son. Oh. Mother like daughter? All I know is that we've already forgave Ross Allen. Because we both realized that this boy was raised down there with that poisonous, venomous mouths of your all's. So, why shouldn't he do what he did? He thought he was doing the honorable thing. But he don't know Karl. He don't know nothing about the man that Karl is. why my kids love him so much, why my grandkids love him, and why my great grandkids love him. And he didn't realize that when he said what he said about Karl and us not coming down there to help take care of family. Well, we got a family up here that loves him, doesn't talk about him, don't abuse him. So, you know, what can I say? Allen was innocent in this. An innocent victim now, I see. So, you can say what all you want to say, Bridget. You know, you've already proven yourself a liar. So, I mean, that's just the way it is, you know. And George, thank you for standing up for Karl, because you know who he is. And you know he's a good man. And I'm proud to be his wife. And yeah, I will stand up for him and come up against the whole family. I don't care. I'm not married to them. When I had took my I will marry this man through thick or thin, better or worse, whatever. I married him, not his family. No, not at all. I may carry a Gilbert name, but not because of his family, but because that's what Karl was born into. And I'm proud to carry his name. Whether they like me or not, I really don't care. You know, I've had people like me, had people dislike me. I could care less whether the family down there likes me or not. See, they're not important to me. The brothers, the sister, even the mother is not in the least bit important to me. Karl is the only one that is important to me. And so, you know, it's just strange how people will try to turn things around and put it on other people, you know. But that don't work with me. I just tell you the truth. And I'm not going to let Ross Allen carry this. No. He didn't start it. He didn't do anything only but trying to defend his two uncles that he was raised around. And he really don't know the one uncle up here. He don't know him. I think if he ever got to spend time with him, he'd probably like Karl. But he's prejudiced against Karl and me because of his uncles and his mom and his grandmother. I know the things that they can say about Karl. He wasn't perfect. And when he walked into jail, turned himself in and went into jail and went to prison for a while, he owned everything that he did, and he wanted to make a clean slate and a new life, and he did. Once he got out, he hasn't been in trouble since then. He doesn't drink alcohol anymore at all, at all. The meth that he used to take a long time ago, he don't take at all. And he got on it pretty heavy right after he come back to Vietnam, because a lot of things went on, and I'm not going to go into that, but there's a lot of things when he first come back that he ran away and he got on drugs and drinking and stayed away from everyone down there. Because he felt like he could be at peace away from them than with them. and taking his booze and doing his drugs, which a lot of vets, not just Vietnam vets, other vets have done that throughout their lives until finally they get help from the VA and get on the right drugs that the VA will give them, legal drugs, or they will die in the gutter in the street without anyone loving them or caring for them. And that's the road that Karl was headed on when I met him. If we hadn't met, he'd have probably died somewhere in a gutter. And they would have probably, the city, whoever found him, would have probably took and buried him in a pauper's grave if he didn't have no ID, and he usually didn't carry ID back then. Because of the trauma and the PTSD and the things that he didn't understand that was going on, he tried to drink it and drug it away. Now, many veterans, even nowadays, that's just getting out of the service, that's dealing with PTSD and all this stuff, some of them are drinking. And the suicide rate is horrendous in the military. The reason why has a lot of things. The person that they are when they go into the service and they go and get on the battlefield, the atrocities that they see and experience damages them mentally. It's things that they had not seen at home here, but saw up front in real life. And that's kind of like what happened to Karl. He come back and he had no real secure support from the family that should have got him into the VA hospital, because down there in San Antonio, Texas, it got the best hospital around. But instead of encouraging him and talking him in and going to the VA and getting help, I maybe they thought that he'd come back just like he was when he went in, and they could treat him like that. Well, it didn't work, and he ran away, and he stayed gone from them, and drank, and did, meth and whatever drug I guess he could get a hold of, until he met me. I met a broken man, George. A total, broken, destroyed man, who really, truly thought that nobody in this whole wide world loved him, including family, that he must have done something so evil and mean that nobody loved him or cared for him. Well, I seen something in Karl far greater than all the hurt and pain that he was suffering. And he was really hurting and in great pain. But I seen more, and we started dating, and we got together, fell in love, and then got married up at Tahlequah, Oklahoma, because I was going to college there. It has been a battle with Karl at first, because if anything went wrong, anything went wrong, he would go back to drinking. He'd get off of it, but if there was some disagreement with me or him or something else, or Mom would call and bitch him out, he'd go back to drinking. It was his security blanket. It helped cover the pain. And he, especially when we get in argument, he thought I would just leave him, Well, I stuck in there, and after a while he began to realize, no, she's not going nowhere. Wow, she's not going nowhere. So when he was in trouble and stuff, I talked him in to go on and go to prison and get it cleared up. And then he went right straight from there to the VA hospital. It was in Kansas, so he went up to the VA hospital up there. They've also got the prison up there by the VA hospital, and the prison. There's a prison up there, Fort Leavenworth is up there too. But he went into the VA hospital right after he got out of Kansas State Prison, and he spent quite a bit of time there. I didn't even get to see him when he was first paroled because they transported him right to the VA hospital. And I remember when I got the call that said that Karl was being released and I could go pick him up. Well, I drove all the way up there because we lived in Coffeyville, Kansas, which was home across the state from where he was. And I drove up there to pick him up, and this gentleman walked him out of the VA hospital, put him in the front seat with me, and he looked at Karl and he says, if you ever have any more problems, we're here for you. Before you pick up that bottle to drink or take any drug, and the stress is so great, let us know and we will take care of you. Well, he hasn't drank since then, and that impressed me about the doctor. That impressed me because he cared. He cared about Karl, just like I cared about him. That's why I tell families that have men or women that come back from service that's fought on the battlefield, be patient with them, because they're not the same people that left and went over there. And yeah, they may act weird, talk weird, and they don't handle stress at all. They just don't. They'll take off and run if they have to. It's that flight or fight attitude, and they've done enough fighting, so they just rather run. And if it's too bad, to put your arm around them and talk them somehow into going into the VA hospital and get on the right meds. Karl's got a whole shelf full of meds right up there that he takes, but they help him handle things that normally he couldn't handle. Thank the Lord. But Pastor George, thank you for standing up with him, for him. And Bridget, I am ashamed of you for laying all this off on your son. No. You started it when you called Karl and jumped him about his dad signing those paperwork. And when George gets here, I'm going to show him the paperwork with your dad's name on it. Oh well, grow up. So thank you, Pastor George. Blessings, because you're a man of God. I've seen what you do, and I know Elizabeth don't like you because she's a woman of Satan, but needless to say, you're a man of God. You really are a man of God, because I've known you a long time now and seen how you walk and how you talk, and you do walk the walk. You just do. Maybe you don't realize it, but you do. So thank you again. And Bridget, apologize to your son. How dare you? Apologize to him. He didn't start this. So blessings in the name of Yeshua HaMashiach. Be blessed on this Sabbath night coming and the Sabbath day tomorrow. And Bridget, I hope you get blessed at church. I just hope you do. And you repent and ask God forgiveness. That's all I can say to you. Blessings.